A wealthy CEO brought his twin daughters along on a blind date with an African-American woman. He disguised himself as financially struggling, but everything transformed when "You cannot enter this establishment with those children," the hostess declared, gazing with contempt at a man dressed in worn denim while holding two 5-year-old girls. "This is an upscale venue, not a children's play area." Marcus Williams, age 38, never expected to be refused entry to a restaurant he had visited regularly for many years. Naturally, without his expensive $3,000 suit and personal chauffeur, he appeared to be just another single parent attempting to treat his daughters to dinner. "I have made a booking," he responded with composure, shifting Sophia to his left side while Emma grasped his available hand. A table for 4 people reserved under Williams. The woman scowled, visibly irritated. "Sir, you must realize that our patrons anticipate a refined atmosphere. You might find it better to seek out a more child-accommodating restaurant." Marcus displayed a smile that caused the hostess to feel strangely uneasy. It was a type of expression that influential individuals wore when they possessed knowledge others lacked. "Would you mind verifying the booking, please?" That's when she made her entrance. Keisha Thompson crossed the parking area, double-checking the location on her mobile device for the third occasion. A 32-year-old defense attorney, she had hesitantly consented to this arranged meeting, convinced by her closest friend who maintained she should socialize more and encounter new people. He has 2 children, she had questioned upon receiving the profile picture. "Really, Michelle, a financially strapped single father is precisely what my life requires at this moment." Yet there she stood, observing a black man facing obvious prejudice at the doorway of one of the city's most costly dining establishments. Something within her reached a boiling point. "Pardon me," Kesha stated, walking forward with determined steps. "Is there an issue occurring here?" The hostess turned swiftly, evaluating the sophisticated attire and self-assured bearing of the newcomer. "Oh, you must be accompanying him. I was clarifying that it would be preferable to locate a more suitable venue for youngsters." "Suitable?" Kesha lifted an eyebrow. "You're referring to a location where black families are made to feel welcome." The quiet that ensued was overwhelming. Marcus observed, captivated, as this woman he barely recognized chose to engage in a conflict that wasn't even her own. "I never stated that," the hostess stammered. "You didn't need to," Kesha responded, retrieving a mobile phone from her pocket. "Are you aware that I practice law? And that businesses like this one can have their operating licenses revoked for discriminatory practices?" It was during that instant that Marcus understood something remarkable. Kesha wasn't defending a wealthy man in disguise. She was standing up for a black father with 2 daughters, nothing more. She had no knowledge of his wealth, his corporation, or anything else. Nevertheless, she had chosen to support him. "You know what?" Marcus announced, lifting the girls. "My companion is correct. Let's locate a place where we're genuinely welcomed." Kesha gazed at him, taken aback by the tranquility in his tone. There was something in those eyes she couldn't identify. It seemed as though he was viewing the entire situation from a completely different angle. "Do you have knowledge of a good location for children?" he inquired, smiling in a manner that made her heart flutter. "I'm familiar with the ideal spot," Kesha answered, "and you can be certain we'll be respected as human beings there." As they crossed the parking area, Marcus watched Kesha conversing enthusiastically with Sophia and Emma, who had immediately adored the attorney lady who had defended their father. What Kesha remained unaware of was that she had just succeeded in the most crucial evaluation of her existence. And what Marcus failed to recognize was that this woman was about to revolutionize his world in ways that no amount of money could purchase. If you're finding enjoyment in this tale of how a man chose to evaluate people's authentic nature, remember to subscribe to the channel because what follows will render you speechless. The cheerful family restaurant was a complete antithesis of the previous establishment. Small tables with plastic surfaces, laminated menus, and the aroma of burgers filling the air. Kesha observed Marcus assisting the girls onto the elevated chairs, noting how he deliberately cleaned each surface before they seated themselves. "My apologies for that," he said, avoiding a direct gaze. "Not precisely what you anticipated for an initial date." Actually, Kesha smiled, "I find this preferable. At minimum, here individuals won't evaluate us based on our skin color." Marcus ceased cleaning the table and met her eyes directly. There was something in that gaze she couldn't decipher, as though he were continuously assessing, measuring responses. Does this occur frequently? Kesha inquired softly. More often than you could fathom, Marcus answered, though his voice held a burden that extended beyond mere acceptance. Sophia, Emma, what would you like to order? While the girl deliberated between chicken pieces and potato fries, Kesha studied Marcus more carefully. His jeans appeared ordinary, but the timepiece on his wrist, which he swiftly concealed with his sleeve, seemed too costly for someone facing financial hardship. Something didn't align. What is your profession? She asked, attempting to appear casual. Marcus paused momentarily. Consulting work. Nothing particularly fascinating. And yourself? My friend mentioned you're an attorney, criminal defense. I primarily handle cases involving racial prejudice and social inequality. Kesha observed how his eyes brightened with sincere interest. I believe everyone merits an opportunity to defend themselves, regardless of their identity. Even wealthy individuals. Marcus asked, as if examining something. Particularly wealthy individuals, Kesha responded without hesitation. Affluent people can be victims as well. Bias doesn't discriminate based on financial status. At that moment, Sophia accidentally spilled juice on Kesha's shirt. While Marcus quickly rose to request napkins, Kesha simply laughed and began cleaning up the child. Don't be concerned, Dad, Emma said, grasping Kesha's hand. The lawyer lady won't abandon us like the others did. The silence that followed was telling. Marcus returned with the napkins, but Kesha had already noticed the anguish that crossed his features. The others? She asked gently. Marcus exhaled deeply, settling back down. It's challenging to find someone who will accept a complete situation. Single father, 2 daughters, complex circumstances. Most disappear when they realize it's not simply entertainment and pleasure. What about their mother? She passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. His voice became quieter. I've been managing everything independently since then. Kesha felt her chest constrict. She looked at the girls who were now sketching on napkins and comprehended why Marcus always appeared guarded. He wasn't merely protecting himself. He was safeguarding the hearts of 2 children who had already experienced tremendous loss. It must be difficult to place trust in people, she observed. You cannot imagine. Marcus gazed through the window. Some individuals only approach when they believe you possess something valuable to offer. Others vanish when they discover that reality is more complicated than a dating profile. And how do you distinguish between them? Marcus smiled in a way that made Kesha sense she was being evaluated. By observing their reactions when situations become challenging. When a child creates a mess, when service staff behave rudely, when someone like that hostess reveals their true nature. And I successfully passed the evaluation. Kesha raised an eyebrow. You're still undergoing it, Marcus replied, though his voice carried warmth. Their discussion was interrupted when Marcus's mobile phone rang. He examined the screen and frowned. Excuse me, I must answer this. It's work-related. Kesha watched as he stepped away to speak, noticing how his demeanor completely transformed from relaxed parent to something more commanding. His words were precise, definitive. No, postpone the appointment with Johnson & Associates. Yes, I said postpone. I'm unconcerned with their opinion. When he returned, Kesha pretended she hadn't overheard anything, but her legal mind was analyzing information. Johnson & Associates was among the city's largest corporate law practices. What type of consultant canceled appointments with them so nonchalantly? Everything satisfactory, she inquired. Just some client who believe they can purchase my availability at any time. Marcus responded, storing his phone away. Kesha nodded, but something wasn't adding up. The man before had discussed financial struggles, yet he canceled meetings with multi-million-dollar firms as if a decision was entirely his. He wore simple clothing, but there was a confidence in his movements that only accompanied genuine authority. Marcus, she said slowly, may I pose an unusual question? He tensed slightly. Certainly. You're evaluating me, aren't you? The smile he offered was sufficient response. It was neither rejection nor acknowledgement, but recognition that she had observed something others had missed. Everyone tests everyone, Kesha. The question is, what type of person are you when you believe no one significant is observing? She laughed, shaking her head. You're intriguing, Marcus Williams. Far more complex than you appear. And you, he replied, watching her slice Emma's food without being requested. "Are precisely who you appear to be, and that's more uncommon than you realize." At that moment, as Kesha assisted two girls she barely knew and conversed with a man who clearly harbored secrets, she had no idea she was about to discover that her understanding of wealth and poverty, power and vulnerability, was completely incorrect. Every fresh humiliation Marcus had endured over the years only reinforced something within him that his antagonists couldn't perceive, a quiet resolve to locate authentic people in a world filled with pretense. And Kesha was about to learn that she had succeeded in the most significant test of her life. 3 weeks had elapsed since that initial encounter, and Marcus experienced something he hadn't felt in years: genuine optimism. Kesha had consented to see him again, and more significantly, she had begun to integrate naturally into the girls' lives without forcing anything. However, Marcus still hadn't disclosed his true identity, and for a very particular reason. "Father, why don't you inform Aunt Kesha about your actual occupation?" Sophia asked as he assisted her with schoolwork in the humble apartment he had leased specifically to maintain the deception. "Because first I must ensure she cares for us as we are currently. Princess," Marcus replied, carefully storing his authentic documents in a concealed safe. What Kesha remained unaware of was that every one of their meetings was being carefully documented, not from obsession, but from necessity. Marcus had learned it through painful experience that people could transform dramatically when they discovered his fortune. His deceased wife Caroline had been betrayed by her own sister who attempted to manipulate her while she was hospitalized. Friends of decades had vanished or become self-serving, and 3 subsequent former girlfriends had tried to use the girls as a pathway to his money. Therefore, Marcus had developed a system: discreetly record public interactions, document authentic reactions, and maintain a false identity long enough to understand a person's true character. It was his method of self-protection. But with Kesha, something was different, and it both excited and frightened him. "Marcus, are you well?" Kesha asked, noticing his distraction as they strolled through the park with the girls. "You appear troubled." "Just considering work matters," he lied, watching as she automatically grasped Emma's hand when the little girl stumbled. "Would you like to discuss it?" "Sometime conversation helps." Marcus nearly laughed at the irony. How could he explain that he was planning a comprehensive restructuring of his company's corporate policies to implement stricter anti-discrimination measures inspired directly by the discussions they had shared? "Actually," he said, stopping their walk, "there's something I want to show you." He retrieved his phone and displayed a photograph of the restaurant where they had faced discrimination. "Do you remember this place?" "How could I forget?" Kesha frowned. "Why?" "They were sued yesterday for racial discrimination. It appears that several people filed official complaints after security recording was leaked showing how they treated a black family at the entrance." Kesha looked at him with surprise. "Really? How did you learn about this?" Marcus hesitated. The truth was that he had been responsible for initiating the entire investigation, using his legal connections to examine the establishment's practices. But he couldn't reveal that yet. "A lawyer acquaintance informed me," he said, which was technically accurate. "Apparently, they are going to have to pay a substantial penalty and provide mandatory training for all staff." "That's positive," Kesha said, but Marcus noticed something in her expression. "Marcus, may I ask you a direct question?" He tensed. "Of course." "You possess more money than you claim, don't you?" Marcus's heart stopped. "Why do you ask?" "Because you have the confidence of someone who has never genuinely worried about finances, because you canceled a meeting with Johnson & Associates as if you were the one in control, and because," she smiled sadly, "no financially struggling consultant obtains insider information about legal proceedings that quickly." Marcus looked at the girls who were chasing butterflies several yards ahead. It was a moment of truth, but something inside him still resisted. "What if I did?" he asked carefully. "Would it alter anything?" "Honestly, yes," Kesha replied, and Marcus's heart sank. "It would change things because it would mean you've been deceiving me for weeks, and dishonesty is the one thing I cannot forgive." Just then, Marcus's cell phone rang. It was David Chun, his legal director and closest friend since college, the only person who knew about his social experiment with Kesha. "Sorry, I must take this," Marcus said, stepping away. "Marcus, we have a problem," David said without introduction. "Someone discovered your meetings with a lawyer." They have photographs, and they know you didn't tell her your identity. Who? Your sister-in-law, Patricia. She's threatening to leak everything to the media. She claims you're auditioning Caroline's memory and that the girls deserve proper protection from opportunists. Marcus closed his eyes. Patricia, Caroline's younger sister, had become a toxic presence in his life since his wife's death. She believed that the girls should be raised by her in an appropriate environment and that Marcus was incapable of making correct decisions about his own life. She wants a meeting tomorrow at the office with you and your girlfriend, David continued. She said if you don't appear, she'll go public with a story that the inconsolable widowed CEO is deceiving an innocent woman. Marcus glanced at Kisha, who was watching the girls with a genuine smile. She had no idea of the storm that was about to engulf them. David, I need you to prepare some documents for me. It's time to show Patricia that she's chosen the wrong person to threaten. What are you planning? She wants a meeting. She'll get one, but it won't be what she expects. Marcus ended the call and returned to Kisha, who was now helping Emma draw on the ground with colored chalk. Is everything all right? She asked, noticing his serious expression. Kisha, Marcus said, kneeling beside her, tomorrow you're going to learn some things about me that could change everything between us. And before that happens, I need you to know that every moment we've shared together has been authentic. Every conversation, every laugh from the girls, every time you defended me, all of it has been the most genuine experience that's occurred in my life in years. She looked into his eyes, seeing something there that made her swallow hard. Marcus, you're frightening me. Just promise me one thing. When you discover who I truly am, remember who I was here with you and the girls. Because that man, the awkward father, the guy who stains his shirt with sauce, the one who needs your strength to face the world, that's the real me. At that moment, as Kesha held his hand without fully comprehending what was happening, Marcus made a decision that would change everything, not just about revealing his identity, but about how he would deal with people like Patricia forever. 4 years, he had allowed others to control the narrative of his life. Tomorrow, that would end, and Kesha would discover that the man she was falling in love with had far more power to protect her than she could ever imagine. The following morning, Kesha stood before one of the most imposing structures in the city. The Westwood Corporate Center was 40 floors of glass and steel, with a company name carved in golden letters at the main entrance. Are you certain this is a location? She asked the doorman, showing him the address Marcus had sent her. 38th floor, executive suite. The man replied, pressing the elevator button. Miss, you're on Mr. Westwood's visitor list. Kesha's stomach churned. Mr. Westwood. The company bore Marcus's surname, but that didn't mean, did it? The elevator doors opened into a luxurious reception area. Sophia and Emma were seated in leather chairs, drawing in expensive coloring books. When they saw Kesha, they ran to embrace her. Aunt Kesha. Daddy said you were coming to see our special office today, Emma exclaimed, holding her hand. Special office? Kesha asked. But before she could process the response, a blonde woman in her 40s approached with firm steps. You must be the famous girlfriend, Patricia Sterling said with a venomous smile. I'm Patricia, Marcus's sister-in-law, sister of the late Caroline. Kesha immediately felt the hostility. Nice to meet you. Oh, I'm certain you are. Patricia laughed coldly, especially considering you have no idea who you're actually dating. That was when the double mahogany doors opened. Marcus appeared, but this time there was nothing modest about his appearance, impeccable suit, authoritative posture, and behind him, 2 people who were clearly attorneys carrying briefcases. Kesha, Marcus said, his voice resonating differently in that environment. Thank you for coming. Marcus, what's happening? Kesha looked around, finally connecting the pieces. This is his office. Actually, said Patricia, crossing her arms, this is a family business. Marcus is the president and CEO of Westwood Enterprises. It's worth approximately $200 million, a detail he forgot to mention during his romantic adventures. The silence that followed was deafening. Kesha looked at Marcus, searching his eyes for denial. She found none. Is it true? She asked, her voice emerging lower than she intended. Marcus sighed. Yes, and there's much more you need to know. Patricia smiled triumphantly. I'll make this simple for you, sweetheart. Marcus here has a habit of testing women by pretending to be poor. You were just another test subject in his social experiments. And now that the game is over, it's time for you to return to your normal life and leave a real family alone. Patricia, you've crossed the line, Marcus said, his voice taking on a tone Kesha had never heard before, authoritative, dangerous. I crossed the line. Patricia laughed. You're exposing your daughters to some stranger just because she was nice to you. Caroline must be turning in her grave. That was the final straw. Marcus turned to David Chun, who had remained silent until then. David, can you begin? David opened one of the folders and extracted a stack of documents. Miss Sterling, 3 years ago after your sister's death, you began a systematic campaign to question Marcus's ability as a father and as a company's administrator. Patricia paled slightly. I was protecting my family. In fact, David continued, you were attempting to obtain custody of the girls and control of the company. We have recordings of your conversations with various lawyers discussing strategies to prove Marcus's mental instability. David activated a tape recorder. Patricia's voice echoed through the room, his clearly depressed. 2 small children need to be properly raised. It's only a matter of time before he makes a serious mistake. When that happens, I'll be ready. That's been taken out of context, Patricia protested. We also have, David continued relentlessly, emails from you to the press trying to sell information about Marcus's personal life, including photographs taken illegally of the girls at school. Marcus approached Patricia, who was now visibly shaking. You threatened to expose my relationship with Kesha as if it was something shameful. As if a black, intelligent, successful woman were unsuitable for my family. I didn't say that. We have recordings, Patricia. Your conversations with journalists where you question Kesha's suitability for our social class, where you suggest she's only interested in the money. Kesha watched in shock. Marcus had systematically documented all of Patricia's attacks, not just to protect himself, but to protect anyone he chose to love. And now, Marcus continued, we come to the most interesting part. David pulled out another set of documents. Ms. Sterling, we have discovered that you have been illegally accessing company bank accounts using passwords you obtained from Marcus's personal computer. Over the past 2 years, you have embezzled approximately $500,000. Patricia staggered. That's a lie. We have the bank records. Transfers to an account in your name. Credit card bills showing expenditures inconsistent with your stated income. Marcus moved closer. You weren't protecting the family, Patricia. You were stealing from it. Patricia's mask of superiority finally fell. Tears of anger and despair filled her eyes. You can't do this to me. I'm family. Family doesn't blackmail. Family doesn't steal. And family definitely doesn't try to destroy innocent people's happiness out of pure prejudice. Marcus turned to Kesha, who was silently processing everything. Kesha, I know I lied about who I was, and I understand if that changes everything between us, but I want you to know that every moment we spent together was real. And all of this, he gestured to the documents, was to protect not only me and the girls, but you as well. Kesha looked at Patricia, who was now crying uncontrollably, then at Marcus, and finally at Sophia and Emma, who were watching everything without fully understanding, but knowing that Daddy were protecting someone they loved. You documented everything, Kesha said slowly. Every threat, every attempt at manipulation. I learned that against people like Patricia, you need irrefutable proof. David addressed Patricia one last time. Mrs. Sterling, you have 2 options. Sign these documents agreeing to return the stolen money, accept a permanent restraining order, and quietly leave this family's life. Or we take this to court where everything will become public, including the criminal charges for embezzlement. Patricia signed the documents with trembling hands, her arrogance completely destroyed. When she left the room, she was a broken woman who had lost not only the money, but any chance of maintaining contact with her nieces. As the doors closed behind Patricia, a heavy silence fell over the room. Marcus had just systematically demolished someone who threatened him using nothing but documented truth and his own strategic patience. But the question hanging in the air was more complex than any legal victory. Would it be possible to rebuild trust after so many secrets had been revealed at once? Kesha remained silent for several minutes, watching Sophia and Emma play on the rug, as if nothing had happened. Marcus waited, respecting her process. You tested me, She finally said, "But you also protected yourself. And more importantly, you protected your daughters from people like Patricia." Marcus nodded. "I've learned that fortune attracts masks. I wanted to know your true heart." "And me?" Kesha smiled sadly. "Did I pass the test?" "You defended a black stranger at the entrance to a restaurant. You paid our bill without hesitation. You loved my daughters before you even knew my full name." Marcus approached her. "You didn't pass the test, Kesha. You completely redefined what I expected to find." 2 months later, Marcus and Kesha were in the same restaurant where they had been discriminated against, but this time they were the owners. Marcus had purchased the establishment, completely renovated it, and appointed Kesha as a legal director of the new anti-discrimination policy. "Mr. Williams," said the former hostess, now unemployed, pleading for a chance. "Please, I need the job." Kesha looked at Marcus, who just smiled. "Everyone deserves a second chance," she said. "But hey, we treat every customer like family, regardless of their appearance or bank account." Patricia had lost everything: her money, her reputation, and any chance of contact with her nieces. She now lived in a modest apartment, working as a receptionist, learning the hard way what it meant to be judged by appearances. "Daddy," said Emma, drawing on the table at the renovated restaurant, "is Aunt Kesha going to live with us forever?" Marcus looked at Kesha, who proudly wore the engagement ring they had chosen together. "Forever, princess." "You know," said Kesha, watching families of all colors dining happily around them, "I've discovered that true wealth isn't what you have, but a character you reveal when no one is looking." Marcus smiled, kissing her forehead. "And I've discovered that true love can't be bought, tested, or forced. It just happens when you find someone who loves your essence, not your possessions." Justice had been served. Patricia learned that prejudice and greed come at a high price. Marcus discovered that honesty builds solid foundations, and Kesha proved that standing up for what's right is worth more than any fortune. The best revenge against prejudice is not to return hatred. It's to build a world where love conquers discrimination, where character trumps bank accounts, and where families are formed through choice, not obligation. If this story touched you and showed you that true value lies in people's hearts, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that justice and love always find a way.